We begin with tragedy in Oshawa. A mother and child are dead, the father and another child in hospital following a house fire this morning. Ali Chiasson has the latest.
The flames gutted this home on McGregor Street. Neighbors woke up to the sirens this morning around 8 a.m.
I heard glass breaking and my daughter was screaming that it's smoke. I was just devastated to understand that there were children in the house, and then I saw them bring the child out, but I had to turn. I could not look.
The fire was sadly fatal. A 46-year-old woman and her 9-year-old daughter died.
When our crews arrived on scene, they encountered heavy smoke and flames from all levels of the house. We ended up removing 3 victims from the residence. One came down the stairs and out the front door by our crews, and the other 2 were moved by the front windows.
A 12-year-old girl and her 56-year-old father are being treated for burns. 3 police officers are being treated for smoke inhalation.
I just saw ambulances, I saw people coming, running, going everywhere.
Did you see the flames?
Yeah, I saw the flames, I saw heavy smoke, and then I saw a policeman or order fireman carrying one of the children out like this. So, God. And now I find one passed away, one has passed away, and hopefully the other 2 or whoever's left is surviving. That's all I can say. It's tragic.
It's too early to know how or where the fire started inside the home. That's what the Office of the Fire Marshal will be investigating. But neighbors tell me that the flames spread quickly, which would have made an escape difficult, especially perhaps for the mother, who those neighbors also tell me had limited mobility. The Fire Marshal's investigation will take some time.
There's significant structural damage to the inside of the house. The second floor is collapsed into the main floor, and the main floor is collapsed partially into the basement.
Any indication that there were smoke alarms, working smoke alarms?
There is some indication that one of the occupants was awoken by smoke alarms, but we haven't confirmed whether there were any or not.
The surviving father and 12-year-old daughter are expected to live. The house is a teardown. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Oshawa.
Canadian officials have said over and over, if the U.S. imposes tariffs on steel and aluminum, Canada would respond. Today, the federal government followed through, delivering a direct blow of its own. 25% levies on billions worth of U.S. goods. Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc unveiling the details in Ottawa.
The Government of Canada, following a dollar-for-dollar approach, will be imposing, as of 12:01 a.m. tomorrow, March 13th, 2025, 25% reciprocal tariffs on an additional $29.8 billion of imports from the United States. This includes steel products worth $12.6 billion and aluminum products worth $3 billion, as well as additional imported U.S. goods worth $14.2 billion for a total of $29.8 billion.
And LeBlanc will be joined by Premier Doug Ford in Washington tomorrow. They'll be meeting up with members of the Trump administration with hopes of de-escalating this trade war. Now, ahead of those talks, this morning, Ford met with Mark Carney, the Prime Minister-designate, who will be sworn in on Friday. Queen's Park reporter Lorenda Redekop has the latest.
Premier Doug Ford started his day away from the video cameras. A breakfast meeting with Prime Minister-designate Mark Carney. No journalists allowed. Trade and tariffs part of the discussion before Ford flies to Washington tomorrow to meet with U.S. President Donald Trump's Commerce Secretary. And today, Trump again mentioned Ontario, declaring a win. Yesterday, Ford agreed to pause the 25% price hike for electricity to 3 U.S. states.
We had a problem with Ontario, and they dropped that when I let them know what we were going to be doing. They dropped it immediately, so I'm glad, because electricity, you shouldn't be playing with electricity. It affects people's lives.
Yesterday, Trump also backed off his threat to hike steel and aluminum tariffs to 50%, instead increasing them by 25%. Ford's reaction to the Trump team's characterization?
They want to call it a win. Whatever. They're playing politics.
As for what he's looking for in Washington,
our message down there tomorrow is let's stop this. It's going to hurt both economies. It's American people that are going to get hurt. Canadians are going to get hurt. Let's sit down and start moving forward on what you want to see in the USMCA and what we want to see.
The USMCA referring to the trade deal Canada has with the U.S. and Mexico. But Ford is tempering expectations, saying this is just a first step on trade or tariffs.
I want to find out where their bar is set, rather than keep moving the goalpost.
Ford was back on U.S. cable news again today.
You know, Trump already clashed with Prime Minister Trudeau, or as he called him, Governor Trudeau. You met with the new Prime Minister, Mark Carney.
Ford praised Mark Carney, calling him an astute business person and smart.
He's not Prime Minister Trudeau. We need to move on from Prime Minister Trudeau and move forward and get this deal done.
He later told reporters at Queen's Park he expects it'll be a better relationship with Trump. Lorenda Redicomp, CBC News, Toronto.
The U.S. tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum may have only gone into effect today, but manufacturers in this country have already been feeling the impacts for weeks. Greg Ross explains.
You can just drive it forward.
It hasn't exactly been business as usual at Conquest Steel in North York. They build landscaping products from steel.
We're a Canadian company first and foremost, but I would say that approximately 20% of our business was from the U.S. and was increasing. Screw on the outside.
But that all stopped a couple of months ago after U.S. President Donald Trump made it clear he intended to tariff aluminum and steel products coming from Canada.
Well before the tariffs were finalized, we received cancellations from our American customers, trapping a lot of inventory, and our Canadian distributors decided to hold off taking new orders and shipping to the U.S. just due to the uncertainty.
Conquest Steel has 12 employees. So far, they've managed to avoid any layoffs. In places like Hamilton, where thousands of steel workers are employed, many are bracing for the worst.
We're scared. Like I'm getting ready to retire in the next few years. I might be forced into retirement early.
It is just a function of time. How long can we go? And then, certainly the longer we're in this type of state, probably we will experience some job losses, but none thus far, certainly among the fabrication shops in Canada.
Things could get a lot worse before they get better. The Canadian government has announced its own tariffs on U.S. steel, a measure many in the industry believe is necessary.
We do support the retaliatory tariffs. The Americans need to feel pain. We can't just roll over and experience all the pain ourselves.
That is going to increase costs for businesses like Richmond Steel and Hamilton. They have been importing all of their products from the U.S.
Like most companies, we tried to preemptive strike and brought in a lot more steel prior to not sure what was going to happen. And that way we have a lot more stock on the floor at this time. Not sure how long they're going to last.
They've already started the process of looking elsewhere for suppliers.
Now we're looking to European markets for some of the grades that we used to import with success.
Ideally, these companies are hopeful that some sort of deal can be reached between Canada and the U.S. that would see all tariffs on steel and aluminum products lifted. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
The Florida Panthers are in town to play our Toronto Maple Leafs tomorrow night. And ahead of the puck drop at Scotiabank Arena, the 2024 Stanley Cup champs stopped by the Hockey Hall of Fame today to donate some much-coveted bling. Our Dale Manukduk was there.
Without further ado, thank you, sir. Florida Panthers general manager Bill Zito and players donating a copy of the team's championship ring to the Hockey Hall of Fame.
I want to say it the right way for you, how humbling and at the same time empowering it is, because you're like, I'm really here.
For now, the ring, shining bright with all its diamonds, is in the Panthers' main floor display, but will eventually join the wall of other donated championship hardware.
It's an exact copy of Barkov's ring. They made two of them. They're fitted for him. One they gave to us and one he kept. So it's an exact ring, the exact same. All the diamonds, everything's all the same.
The ring screams Florida, with palm trees and a map of the U.S. state made out of diamonds, and the series wins en route to the cup engraved on the inside.
And for the first time in their history, the Florida Panthers are Stanley Cup champions.
The GM was coy about his favorite part of the ring.
There's something on there that is uniquely attached to the team, Game 7, but it encapsulates our whole season, and it was sometimes less is more and simple is harder.
This Florida couple in town for tomorrow night's game were at Game 7 when the Panthers won the Cup, as well as the banner-raising ceremony.
We do an annual Panthers road trip. Our son flies in tomorrow. He's going to be bummed that he missed this, and we just found out it was happening.
It was great, and we got to touch the cup when it came to the arena earlier this end of last year. So, yeah, now we just got to do it again.
Lovely couple, but I'm sure somewhere Leafs Nation is screaming after 57 seasons, we just want one. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
The U.S. State Department is asking Mexico's president to assist in the capture of Canadian fugitive Ryan Wedding. Wedding faces U.S. federal charges related to 3 murders and cocaine trafficking. He's also accused of running a billion-dollar drug smuggling network with ties to a Mexican cartel. Wedding competed in the 2002 Olympics for Canada as a snowboarder. Last week, he was added to the FBI's list of the 10 most wanted fugitives. Peel Police giving an update today on a stabbing in Brampton that left 1 woman dead. Police saying the incident is being investigated as a case of intimate partner violence, and the accused has been charged with second-degree murder. Now, officers responded after a child called 911 just after 8:30 yesterday morning, arriving to find a woman with stab wounds as she later died in hospital. 3 youths are facing charges after a carjacking in North York. Toronto police responded to a call in the area of Victoria Park and Shepherd on Saturday just after 8:30 p.m. They say a person was in their vehicle when a lone male suspect entered the back seat and held a knife against the victim's throat, demanding the keys. The victim complied and exited the vehicle, and the suspect drove away after a couple other suspects had gotten in. They didn't get far, though. Officers quickly located the stolen vehicle, boxing it in, and after a brief struggle and foot chase, arrested the 3 suspects. 2 16-year-old boys and 1 17-year-old boy are now facing numerous charges. Toronto Public Health issuing a warning tonight of a potential measles exposure at Pearson Airport earlier this month. Officials are investigating a case of measles on an Air Canada flight from Tokyo to Toronto on March 2nd. This latest case comes as infections are ticking up across the country. Jennifer LaGrassa explains what you need to know to stay safe.
Measles is a highly contagious respiratory infection. It's spread through the air when someone who is sick coughs, sneezes, or talks.
We would estimate that one person who has measles could perhaps infect 20 people. It's one of the most infectious communicable diseases we deal with.
I understand the concern of our community. We are monitoring this situation carefully as it evolves.
Symptoms start with a cough, runny nose, and irritated eyes. Then there could be a rash, as well as pneumonia or brain swelling. It can be deadly. Health officials are concerned because they haven't seen community spread like this in years. In Canada, measles has been considered completely gone since 1998, but dropping vaccination rates and international travel have led to new cases. Health officials say that vaccination is the best protection. In Ontario, kids will get the first dose of the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine at 12 months. Then they will get a second dose of this vaccine between the ages of 4 to 6. Overall, the risk in our community is still low. That's because the vaccination rates are high.
Now, the people that we're most worried about are unvaccinated people because they're the people that are most susceptible to getting measles if they're exposed.
If you don't know whether you're vaccinated or if you worry about your kids who can't get the vaccine just yet, you can call your family doctor or local public health unit for more information. If you're born before 1970, you are considered immune. And if you think that your kids might have measles, call ahead to your clinic or family doctor just so you can take all precautions before going there to make sure you don't spread it to others. Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News. Windsor.
The Bank of Canada has once again lowered its benchmark interest rate, this time by a quarter point amid the ongoing trade war with the U.S. The key lending rate now sits at 2.75%, the lowest in almost 3 years. A Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem said the Canadian economy started strong this year, but the on-again, off-again trade war with the U.S. is starting to have an impact, and uncertainty has shaken business and consumer confidence. Macklem warned the economic damage could be severe, depending on how steep tariffs are and how long they're kept in place. With this ongoing trade war, there has been a huge spike in Google searches for the word tariff. And even scarier, many are now Googling recession. And now economists are warning the early indicators of a recession are beginning. Chris Glover has more.
There'll be a little disturbance.
Donald Trump is firm his tariffs will not cause a recession.
I don't see it at all.
But business and political leaders are not so sure.
There's an irrational man who's at the head of the world's largest economy, and he's willing, I guess, to sink the entire globe into a recession.
It's a self-made recession by one person.
And economists are watching closely as North American stock markets have been tumbling.
The stock market's typically a leading indicator, and that's not done very well the last few days.
What are the chances that Canada is going to be in recession this year?
The chances of recession seem pretty high to me.
The technical definition of a recession is 2 quarters of negative growth in a country's GDP, but the C.D. Howe Institute takes more into account, including employment data, product orders, and building permits.
There's a lag to that data, so we very well could find out that that this first quarter was the beginning of a recession.
Canada exports roughly 70% of goods to the States, and each day 2.5 billion USD crosses the border. Put simply, the on-again, off-again tariffs are driving U.S. demand down while prices are going up.
There's going to be a readjustment period with supply chains, how connected we are, and so I think it's very likely if these tariffs are in place that we're headed for a period of turbulence here.
The fight over the word, whether or not we're in a recession or not, we're in a bit of a trouble spot right now, regardless. And I think policymakers are going to have to try to figure out how to get out of this. What do they need to do?
We're talking, I think, rightfully and finally, quite frankly, about doing some things that we can control.
Economists say there are 3 areas we can control right away: monetary policy, like the additional interest rate cut we saw from the Bank of Canada today; immediate government policy, like expanding EI; and structural solutions, like removing provincial trade barriers and finding new international markets.
You're going to need all 3. Hopefully that will help with our dependence on our exports to the U.S.
How can we recession-proof ourselves in the middle of this economic moment?
Well, fortunately or unfortunately, Canadians have been hit by 3 pretty significant negative economic shocks over the past 5 years.
Those 3 economic shocks: job losses from COVID, high prices with inflation, and high interest rates. And just like with them, the advice in a recession is to insulate your finances.
Right now, if you're in a relatively good position, reduce as much as possible your debt, because job opportunities may be less in the future. But it's still a tough time overall, independent of tariffs. We have consumers still not over the shock of high prices.
In the past 20 years, C.D. Howe says we've dealt with 2 recessions: the U.S. housing crash in 2008 and the start of the COVID pandemic, causing a recession that C.D. Howe says only lasted for March and April of 2020. So that was by May of 2020.
We were already back. Out of it.
Because we were besting a really terrible basement number.
And you just, and so you picked once it was a self-imposed shutdown, right? So what's different, this was worrying this time around, is that big bump is unlikely to happen unless the tariffs are sort of pulled away right away. If the tariffs are kind of permanent, yes, they might be one-off changes to the price level, but they're going to have knock-on effects. So I don't suspect we'll get that big rebound.
And with Trump saying he wants tariffs to be permanent, that rebound could take months before financial markets and trade markets rebound with it.
Colette is here with a check on the forecast. And Colette, I had to bring out my winter jacket again today after 2 days of, a lighter jacket.
Yes, I changed my dog walking coat yesterday to the shorter one and back to the longer one today. So yes, I think we're all getting used to, and when you have this battle between winter and spring, that's what we get into. Well, it's back to the short coat for tomorrow as things are going to be warming up once again. So we can kind of illustrate this by taking a look at what's going on with our jet stream. We're essentially kind of seeing a split jet. So you can see those brighter colors from Saskatoon to Winnipeg across the Great Lakes. So that's the northern branch, but to the south, some strong winds too in the upper atmosphere there along the southern plains and over towards the southeast. And that's likely going to be brewing some severe weather as this week wears on and we get into the weekend as well. So lots of things will be going on affected by those upper winds. And this is what we're talking about at the surface with our daytime highs. 7 degrees today, Windsor, certainly a departure from yesterday, but it was, you know, milder than Toronto at 1. Hamilton, 2 degrees. St. Catharines, not too bad with 4 degrees there and just at the freezing mark for Oshawa. So as we look through the overnight hours, generally we'll have partly cloudy skies, but I do want to show you that batch of cloud there on the west end of Lake Ontario. So that could be a little bit stubborn. So overcast, but just in a pocket of areas, whereas elsewhere around the GTA, there'll actually be sunshine. That cloud deck will erode eventually too. So it becomes a situation of mostly sunny skies and milder conditions for tomorrow. Then into Friday, kind of the same thing. There'll be some areas especially stubborn around the lakeshore where you'll get some of that low cloud, and then elsewhere a good deal of sunshine. So a little bit variable, but in general, the next couple of days we're going to be seeing some blue sky there. Now overnight tonight, those temperatures down to -2. The winds won't be very strong, but enough that it's going to feel like -6 tomorrow morning. So if you're an early riser or out there early, walking the dog or whatever you might be doing, it's going to have a chillier feel, but not in the afternoon. Once we get into that sunshine, a high of 8 degrees, Friday 10, but watch out this weekend. We are looking at that rain moving in, rainy and windy conditions as well into Sunday, although mild. That's what we're going to be dealing with, Kelda. So we do have those mild conditions, but wet.
So tomorrow starts off a little chilly, then it gets warmer, so it might be a 2 different jacket kind of day.
It is one of those. Layer up, folks. We got to deal with that.
Oh, yeah. Thanks so much, Colette. And that's all the time we have tonight. Thanks for watching. Have a great night, everyone.